Sup YouTube? Now, I decided to start off my series with a bang, and talk about probably what I felt was the most important, or the core subject, of the whole intelligent design versus evolution debate. Where the last video left off, Calvin Smith promotes the idea of intelligent design as an alternative to evolution, as he believes that evolution is a flawed theory, not based upon actual scientific fact, but rather on faith, similar to Christianity, and he therefore promotes the idea of an intelligent designer as an alternative for children to learn in textbooks. We go on to a sort of branch from the first video, where Calvin Smith explains the moral consequences of believing in evolution. So the basic premise goes a little something like this. Since atheists do not believe in a god, they must believe that the universe created itself in another way, namely through evolution. And so, as they do not believe in God, they do not believe that there is a God to give them absolute moralities in which to guide them. And therefore, the only thing that guides them is their sinful nature. Well, their inherently sinful nature. And which leads to the conclusion that belief in evolution, or in other words, belief that God did not create the world, leads to immoral behavior. At the risk of sounding arrogant and maybe a bit asshole-ish, this proves how idiotic or how slimy Calvin Smith really is. What you have to understand right from the get-go is that Mr. Smith, as well as the folks at the Creation Ministries International, focus on a literal interpretation of the Bible. They take it word for word, and they barely, if ever, use anything in a metaphorical or otherwise figurative sense. Now, many Christians I know wouldn't even go that far, and they're willing to sort of bend in the way of certain scientific insights that clearly refute some of the claims in the Bible. And Mr. Smith regards this as a sort of blasphemy. He does not agree with this sort of interpretation of the Bible. He says it's either all or nothing. I would rather you guys believe in something that you felt comfortable with. If you personally feel comfortable with interpreting the Bible in a completely literal sense, like the CMI promotes, I encourage that. And likewise, if, like many Christians I know, you feel that you can bend a few of the phrases in the Bible to sort of fit the observations provided by modern science, then again, I would recommend you follow whatever you feel comfortable with. Follow with whatever belief your heart desires, just as long as you remain a good and moral person, as judged not only by society, but by yourself. This is my sort of moral philosophy that I follow. In other words, it's basically the golden rule with a few tweaks here and there. First of all, it's not an obligation for atheists to believe in evolution, despite what you might say. Atheism is only the rejection of the belief in God. Nothing more. Period. Atheists are not obligated to believe in evolution. Many do, and for obvious reasons, but it is not an obligation for an atheist to believe in evolution in the same way that it's not an obligation for a Christian to donate to charity every month. So because there's no belief in a divine creator, we somehow are all just evil, sinful creatures? Well, I think we did pretty well regardless of whether there's a God or not. Again, I don't want to offend Christians when I say this, but the world is an unfair place, and you should accept that before you go off to pray to God. I honestly think that praying to God for justice or some equality is one of the saddest parts of your religion. Just as an aside, I've never really understood why the all-powerful, all-knowing God, who created the universe and everything in it, decides to busy itself with the actions of one particular species on the Earth. Moving on. Let's get the facts straight. The obvious facts. Evolution is only a theory to explain the diversity of life. It has no bearing on our moral or ethical standing. The theory of evolution does not state that we have to act in a certain way, in the same way that the theory of gravity does not somehow make us suicidal and more prone to jumping off three-story buildings. Evolution deals with the facts, nothing more. But even if evolution were to somehow make us all immoral people, if that was what we were taught in school, does that mean we should stop teaching it? No. What if I told you that people got more violent if they learned that the world was round? I mean, should we stop telling people that the world is round? No. But Christians might be saying by now, well, if you don't have God on your side, who are you to say what's right and wrong? Then I use fairly objective standards to judge what's right and wrong. For example, if something is right, then it either benefits the humankind in a way that maximizes happiness or health, or minimizes suffering. Now, while your variation of right and wrong might be completely different from mine, I think that my definition is fairly good, considering how it is universal amongst not only human beings, but sentient creatures in general. I'll be honest with you. I'm of the mindset that if you need someone or some god to tell you how to act accordingly and how to behave, then I think you're pretty much screwed already, regardless of whether this god exists or not. And I will sound cruel and cold-hearted when I say this, but if you feel that you are this interdependent on the belief in a deity to provide you with a meaning, to provide you with a moral code, and to provide you with justice that you do not find in the world, then I honestly think you need psychological help. It's not healthy to center yourself around the belief in something you cannot see nor prove exists, and then obsessively, needlessly, devote yourself to this belief. Let's wrap this up. First of all, this argument is completely unsubstantiated, with any sort of proof. No statistics, no studies done on this, no nothing. And even the argument itself is a non sequitur. Just because you believe in evolution doesn't necessarily mean that you have to act in a certain way, because evolution doesn't tell you to act in a certain way, or it doesn't guide you to act in a certain way. Furthermore, there are plenty of atheists that do not believe in evolution, and plenty of theists that do believe in evolution. And finally, if you really need God to tell you how to behave, you need to get out more. Overall, this is just another sad attempt by extremist, fundamentalist, young earth creationists that attempts to discredit evolution in one way or another, no matter how slimy or dishonest, so that they can take evolution out of school and implement their dogma into the curriculum. Try harder next time, Mr. Smith, and may the truth always be heard.